This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so great to have you all here. Welcome to this online ProCEedS webinar. What we are trying to do today is essentially to bring together all the people who have been taking part in recent project secondments which have been taking place in the framework of the ProCEedS project. We have a wide network of beneficiaries within this project, whose aim is to realize knowledge transfer in the food supply chain for the application of circular economy practices. This is a project funded by the European Commission Horizon 2020 program. Specifically, it's a Marie Curie Skłodowska action, and it belongs to a stream of projects called Research and Innovation Staffy Change projects. Basically, the way in which these type of projects work is that members of staff from academia are seconded in industrial organizations. They go there, they spend some time at the host organization working on practical problems, solving some practical challenges. Of course, I mean, this project was impacted in some way by the inability to travel that we needed to deal with in the last couple of years. Secondments were a difficult proposition where there were multiple lockdowns and when it was not so easy to have international travel. But in recent months, we have tried our best to start a very large number of secondments and to perform some meaningful knowledge change. So today we have thought to put together this exciting webinar where we will have several of our secondees who have recently come back from some periods they've spent at some of our industrial partners, which will essentially show to the whole consortium and also to some external members of staff at some of the involved organizations, the results of their recent research. So the program of the webinar involves 4 different talks. Basically, we have talk about the recent secondment which took place in Poland, where Akis, Cristian, and Raffaele were involved, where essentially they studied the current status of implementation of circular economy practices in Poland. Then talk about the recent stay in Malta by Claudio and Eugenio, where essentially they investigated the implementation of circular economy practices in the aquaculture supply chain. Then a brief presentation from Adrian and Slobodan about the knowledge change activities which are happening between SEERC, Southeast European Research Center, and the Association of Wine Producers in Fruska Gora in Serbia, which is a recent partner within our consortium, a partner that recently joined our consortium. And finally, I'll just say a few words, if time allows, about my recent stay at ProTeg, one of the industrial partners we have within the consortium, where I started studying challenges that we have in the collection and reprocessing of used cooking oil supply chain, especially in light of COVID-19 pandemic. So sounds like a great session, a lot of practical knowledge transfer activities that have been happening in recent months. I wouldn't hesitate any further to give the floor to the first set of speakers. So Akis, Raffaele, and Cristian will present the work that has been resulting from their recent secondment in Poland, to be precise, in Łódź, at the Foundation for the Development of Entrepreneurship, which is a partner in our project. So over to you, Akis, and all the best for your presentation.
Thank you.
A plea to everybody else: if you're not speaking, please shut down your microphone. I am trying my best to check that, but sometimes it can be quite disturbing for the speaker. Thank you, and over to you, Akis.
Thank you. First of all, can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, I will just keep it like that because I'm afraid that if I put it like on a full screen, there's going to be a problem, okay?
Okay, as you prefer.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, hello, everybody. This is a presentation about a recent secondment in Łódź, in Poland, exploring the current status of circular economy in Poland, evidence from Łódź. That's a place where we went. And it's presented by me, Cristian Bergen Riquelme, who unfortunately couldn't join us because he's working at the moment, and Raffaele Leonese from the University of Parthenope. This is the outline of our presentation. We'll start with an introduction, where we will provide a brief overview of the team of the secondees, the organization that was seconded, FRP, and a list of the interview meetings that we had. Then we'll continue the preliminary research, where we'll share some evidence about the barriers to a circular economy that Poland is facing, always in the context of food supply chains. Then a summary of the interview meetings, what we discussed and the findings. And finally, we'll end with the conclusions, some key findings, along with some future research opportunities. This is a photo with the team of secondees looking from left to the right, the three of us, and the team from FRP. All of them are with us also today. Here is a more detailed description of the team of secondees. Two of us were from the University of Sheffield and Raffaele Leonese from the University of Naples. All of us having some research interest in the circular economy, either on a PhD or a master's level. And here is the organization where we seconded, FRP, established in 1991, a certified foundation member of the Enterprise Europe network with a long participation in many EU projects. We have mentioned some of them here. That they aim at to contribute to the economic development of the country, Poland, in particular in the Łódź region, the region where the premises are located, by developing the entrepreneurial spirit, integrating the business environment, and conducting educational and consulting activities. In order to achieve this objective, the foundation is organizing a series of training, seminars, and consulting services that are focused on entrepreneurship, setting up and running businesses, especially startups, innovation support, that it's all about fostering collaboration between Polish companies and local research institutions and universities, cross-border activities, business-to-business oriented programs that is all about a cooperation between Polish companies and other companies in neighboring countries. And last but not least, matchmaking Polish businesses from the region of Łódź with universities across Europe in order to foster knowledge exchange. So once we got to FRP, the team there was really kind enough to provide us a list of the meetings that they had arranged for us. As you can see in the table, these meetings were involving people from different institutions, organizations, from academia, from policy making, and of course, companies, industrial partners. Unfortunately, due to some unprecedented events, such as some COVID incidents and some factory mishaps, such as the machinery malfunction, we managed only to meet with one of them, namely Bifix, that you are going to see also in the following slides. So before going there, we decided to run a preliminary research on the barriers that the Poland is facing towards transition to a circular economy. We identified 4 reports. I have included the reference to these reports at the end of this presentation for whoever is interested in. And we identified 4 general categories, namely regulatory framework, limited awareness, little governmental support, and market structural issues. The idea behind this preliminary research was to identify the topics that could form the base of the questions that we are going to use during the meetings that FRP had already organized for us. Just a brief overview of these barriers. So, related to the legislative framework, we saw that the regulatory framework in Poland is characterized by a high level of complexity and instability. There is limited effectiveness of the current laws for adapting and amending national regulations on municipal waste. So, in other words, companies are not able to use the byproducts of one industry as an input to their own production processes. And we found also that there is a limited push towards circularity, specifically absence of circularity or recycling target, something that you can see in other European countries. In addition, we read in these reports that there is a limited awareness about the circular economy concept, and this is something that we also saw in the interview meetings that we had, something that as a result, eco-innovation is lagging behind compared again to other countries in the region. With respect to the governmental support, again, circular economy, unfortunately, is perceived as an EU obligation. As a result, the government is doing like the least that can be done in order not to have any repercussions from the Commission. There are limited investments. There are reluctance to reform crucial sectors such as the energy and the farming one, and the lack of initiative in order to support companies that they want to work in this field, as well as to foster some cross-sectoral cooperations. With regard to the market and structural issues, we saw that there is a huge power imbalance, something that is quite prevalent in the food sector. So the distribution and the retail stage of the supply chain has a lot of power, and they're able to impose the requirements on the upstream actors. Limited financing, and one of the key problems is that the food sector in Poland, especially the farm sector, is characterized by low-scale farmers that are unable to gain the profits in order to scale up their production, and as a result disseminate relative like circular economy practices to other sectors as well. So once we met with FRP, immediately the next meeting was with Professor Bartosz Kalinowski, that is also here with us, where we shared these findings. we explored the potential to attract more companies from the network, and of course form some collaboration in terms of some papers, some other research projects where we could collaborate, or ideally to create a comparative analysis of more than one colonies that we're about to visit during our stay here. The outcomes of these meetings, because we met on a weekly basis, it was a consumer study in Poland that is based on Cristian's MSc dissertation, Impact of COVID-19 on Food Waste Production Habits in Lodz. That would be the equivalent one now. And we have another company that it's a dairy product manufacturer that but it was really kind enough to establish a connection, and we are still in the initial stage of making some contacts and start collecting some data. So the first meeting that we had was with Professor Pavel Brila from the Department of International Marketing and Retailing from the University of Łódź, whose research focused on marketing, consumer behavior, organic food, and national student mobility and standards. He's an expert on consumer behavior and the role of food standards and the impact of ethnocentrism on the consumption of organic food products. Given his expertise, we decided to revolve our discussion around the public perception of organic food products, sustainable production methods, and food standards. Specifically, what the professor shared with us is that indeed there is a growing interest, attention on information about production methods, traceability, and country of origin in Poland. That means that consumers are willing to pay more for these products that have produced in a sustainable manner, and they have connected this premium price with health benefits and the protection of the environment. Apart from that, he told us that one of the most important standards now in the Polish market is the Polish origin label that he has seen. Also, he has published quite a few papers on this topic, that people are really willing to buy. Let's say there's a fast-growing demand towards products that have this accreditation. Thinking of these things, we concluded that by combining the Polish label, so a standard of the country of origin, and the organic label, could also increase the demand for the products that could be produced in a circular manner. And as a result, have a new market segment which could further increase in the future. As a conclusion for this meeting, indeed, the implementation of circular practices in the agri-food industry is still in its infancy. And this was accredited to the small-scale farmers and their reluctance to collaborate with others in their close proximity in order to be able to grow and foster a faster sectoral change. So for the implementation of circular economy, it is necessary to go forward with some deep regulatory reforms. I have also mentioned the small-scale farmers issue earlier. Create environmental awareness and convince farmers to adopt more circular practices. But in order to do that, they have to move away from the short-term focus to the more meso and long-term focus. The next meeting that we had was with Mr. Marcin Podgorski, who is the head of unit for the Lodz region. He's stationed in Belgium, Brussels. And his unit is responsible for supporting entrepreneurs on open innovation, circular economy, and the development of entrepreneurs networks in the region. He is one of the people who is actively involved in the development of the Horizon Europe project. And he's currently participating in 3 projects focusing on circular economy, specifically Go Benelux, Local Governments for Circular Economy and Business Internationalization, that's again in Lodz, and the improvement of environment and resource efficiency through use of life cycle instruments, something that we are interested, as well as our parent EU project, Retrace, as you well know. So, given his expertise, we developed a set of questions that it's all about that were revolved about the awareness of the concept and the practices that these EU research projects are developing in order to increase their attention towards the circular economy. And as the previous, as Professor Brilla and the literature and the preliminary research that we did, he highlighted also the lack of awareness about the concept of circular economy in Poland. What was really important was that he said that we should move away from this point of view of policies and economic or tax measures that are dominating at the moment, and we should go forward with some educational reforms. That is, we should include the principles of circular economy in our educational systems, starting from the very early years of a student. From an industrial point of view, SMEs and largest companies should emphasize on connecting their different value chains, stimulating, for example, the gradual transformation of their suppliers through the formulation of synergies between different sectors. At the same time, from a supply chain point of view now, suppliers should be engaged more actively in the product development, as this could be part of more innovative solutions, such as modular design, or in the case of packaging for the food industry, to materials who are more environmentally friendly and can therefore reduce the burden on the environment following the consumption of the products. We asked him because in one of the reports that we had, we read that Poland is in a very advantageous position in Europe, and this could work like to a great benefit for it as a, let's say, for the diffusion of circular economy. His reply was that, yeah, indeed, it is an advantageous one. It is exactly the middle of Europe, but this is not a sufficient factor that will be able to foster this. In contrast, we should change in a holistic way the way in which the society thinks. It's not about the location of a country only. We should change the consumerist patterns, and we should develop not awareness campaigns, but we need to integrate circular economy in public education. At the same time, we should establish international relations with countries and regions that have a higher level of circular economy maturity in order to learn from them by imitating or adapting examples that they have already there and they're working in a satisfactory manner. The last interview meeting that we had was with a company. The company is called Bifix. It's a family business established in 1992 that specializes in the production of fruit tea, herbal tea, organic tea, preservation of dried foods and drying technology, as well as other product categories such as food supplements, monohair supplements, and jam. All the products are certified. We have included some of these certifications at the bottom of this slide, and they have both the organic label and the Polish country of origin standard that Professor Brilla was mentioned earlier. It's a company that is almost fully vertically integrated. The only exception are the logistics. They have their own R&D department that's examining the functionality of natural ingredients, and it's able to produce new product categories and new recipes. They have a very strong bond with their local community. Imagine that most, like 95% of their employees, they're all from the local community. In terms of their suppliers, 70% comes from Poland, from their own farm, and only 20 to 25% from China and Sri Lanka, but these categories involve some specialities in terms of herbs that you can find only there. In terms of customers, 60% goes to Europe, while the remaining one is exported to Canada and United States, where big retailers are using them under their own retailers' brand. So Bifix is an almost zero waste company. here we have included like a small diagram of their process that showcase the circular economy practice that they have in place. In the middle, you can see their own plantation they maintain in Poland. I hope that the colors, that you can see clearly the colors, they're a bit dark. I apologize about that. So there is one stream that concerns like the leftovers from herbs and fruits that are used as a biofertilizer in the same plantation. You have here another arrow that concerns the fruit leftovers that are used to produce jam. And whatever is left, which is just a portion from the fruits and herbs, is redirected to some local companies that are using them as animal feed. So as you can imagine, as you can understand, like the amount of waste is close to zero. And I say close to zero because, of course, there should be a little percentage, less than 1%, that unfortunately it's impossible to be utilized anywhere else. However, one of the key innovations that the company is running right now, it concerns its packaging. In detail, the company has removed all plastic from their packages. The cardboard that it is using is compostable, and the tea films are biodegradable. In other words, with this innovation, the company has managed to minimize almost to zero the waste that is produced on the consumer's level. Some key points. So the sustainable packaging that I described a few minutes ago was developed by the company's R&D department. However, at this point, this is applying only on the organic product line. And the reason behind that is the shortage of paper in the Polish market. So the company is a bit, it's really hard to upscale this packaging to all their production lines. We're talking about almost 100 products lines at the moment. It's a company that doesn't use radio or TV as a marketing channel, but only social media, where it tries to establish a more direct connection with its consumers. And it has also noticed an indication of a growing interest towards sustainable practices. That's also one of the drivers that has made this company looking into innovations and things that could further improve the sustainability of their products. It has also noticed through the social media that there's a strong correlation between organic products and young people. In terms of supply chain management, the relation with suppliers, it is oriented towards only long-term contracts because they have seen that in this way they're able also to involve them more in their production process. And if they want to go forward with some change in the production, that it's much easier to collaborate with them, to communicate with them and find like a middle way. They're also, most of them, local. It's also a great example of locality. And the only challenge that they are facing at the moment, apart from the shortage of paper, is that they have a growing demand that the current production is unable to meet at the moment. We asked them about what they are thinking of doing, and their reply was that they want to extend, they want to grow the plantation that they have already in place. So they want to keep on this local focus and community focus that they have, and they are having for all the years that they have been operating. Key findings from these meetings is the limited awareness of the circular economy concepts. All of our interviewees highlighted that, especially in the case of BFIX, when we mentioned the term circular economy, they were not aware of it, despite the fact that they were a zero waste company and they're looking into sustainability, etc. BFIX also highlighted the locality as a great argument for circular economy as a crucial success factor. They are local, their employees are local, they're doing great, they're attracting more customers. meso long-term planning is necessary. This is something that we concluded from a discussion from Marcin and BFIX. We saw that BFIX is relying on long-term contracts with the suppliers. Young ages have the potential to drive the shift to a more circular future. Indeed, we see that the younger the age, there's a growing awareness about sustainable practices. BFIX is also showing this through their packaging, the interaction that they have with social media. And all of them also highlight the limited support from governments. Unfortunately, most of the companies rely either on European funds or private organizations that are giving access to these funds. Or in some rare cases, companies such as BFIX, healthy companies with a long history in the sector, that they have the financial capacity to go forward with some green investments. As a future directions, following a secondment, we try to maintain communication with BFIX. Unfortunately, they have very challenging workload at the moment. We also have the recent events in the neighboring region that is making this collaboration a bit hard at the moment. However, Professor Bartosz Kalinowski conducted this their company. We're in the process of going forward with some questions. We have already shared some questions with them. From what I know, they're about to meet also soon and have a first wave of data. We have now the also ongoing consumer study based on the MSc dissertation from Cristian. We have just received all the responses, so now we are in the phase of analysis. And of course, we'll continue to pursue contacts with other companies in Poland, as well as the companies from the other countries that we have in the project, in order to develop some comparative case studies. Yeah, that was it. Sorry for running a bit, but I was a bit conscious of time. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask anything you want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Akis, for this great overview of all the activities you have performed in what seems to have been a very busy month you spent in Poland. Not sure whether there is any question. Please type in the chat if you want to ask questions to the presenter. I don't know if Raffaele wants to add any remark, or if Renato wants to add something from the perspective of the other sending organization, since they are here.
Andrea, just to say thank you to Akis and Raffaele and the other secondists for this presentation, mainly to Akis, of course. And I would just even hope about the possibility to continue this interesting secondment in Lodz, since we have seen that there are many perspectives and many things can be deepened. So I hope that they will have a chance in the near future to continue successfully this very interesting experience, so they can give us a very challenging feedback. So that's all.
Yeah, I think, talks are in progress with FRP for a second wave of secondments. I think this very much depends on the possibility of organizing some further stakeholders interviews, and I think Akis is on it. Akis, do you want to say something about this?
Yeah, the truth is that we're planning to have another secondment actually now, mid-March. And the main idea, because we had a few discussions also with Bartek, was to create a comparative analysis, to create a comparative case study between Bifix and the dairy company that Bartik has established contact with. Unfortunately, due to the challenging period that Bifix is at the moment, they are really busy. We saw that there may be some hurdles that they couldn't allow us to go forward with this comparative case study. As a result, we thought that it is better in order also to, that it is better to leave it for the near future, where we'll be 100% sure that we will be able to go forward with this comparative study. So yeah, we are in touch. We are also, I'm trying to establish contact with some companies in Poland that engage already in circular economy. And I really hope that we are going to have soon some news from them in order to go forward with another secondment.
Thank you very much, Akis. And yeah, another aspect that it is worth to be mentioned is that we have also run a survey in collaboration with Bartek's team from University of Puch, looking at consumers' habits when it comes to food waste, running a sort of cross-country comparison. We have already run this survey in the UK, and also trying to establish whether COVID-19 and the pandemic introduced some changes in the way we deal with food waste at home. So we are also looking forward to reading the results of this study. Thank you very much for this. We are really looking forward to future developments on this strand of work. Thank you for your point, Oriol. So yeah, slides will be available. That's fine. Probably we will post them on the website of the ProCEedS project. We can now move to the next presentation if there is no further question. So the next presentation is related to the experience that two young researchers from University of Naples Parthenope had in Malta in last winter. So we had Eugenio Geremia and Claudio Catone, who were seconded at Aquabiotech, which is a company which is deeply involved in research into the aquaculture sector based in Malta. And Eugenio and Claudio, under the supervision, under the close supervision, I would say, of Steve Prescott, who is here as well today, spent quite a long period of time in Malta, 4 months, and basically they developed a study of the opportunities for circular economy practices implementation in the aquaculture sector. So over to you, Eugenio and Claudio, for what I think will be a very interesting presentation. Thank you, and you can start. We can see the presentation, everything is working well, so feel free to start.
I'm supposed to be presenting the first few slides. I'd just like to check that you can hear me first.
Sure, we can.
You can hear me, that's great. Okay, I'm Steve Prescott, I'm from ABC. I'm supervising Claudio and Eugenio. Claudio, Eugenio, you're breathing down the microphone again. Of course, the hosting company was Aquabiotech Group. as a company, we do various things. We do consulting services for the aquaculture, fisheries industry, for marine, anything to do with marine surveys as well. That type of consulting. We are also involved with RDI, researching various things in terms of innovations in mainly the aquaculture industry. So, for example, one of the things that we're doing at the moment is looking at the use of Internet of Things and artificial intelligence to make aquaculture production more efficient. And another important component of that work, and also of increasingly other projects that we're working on as well, is circularity within aquaculture, co-products valorization, those types of things. And that's something that I've got a background in as well. We also do various other things here. For example, we do testing of vaccines, and we also, one of the main specialities of the company is we design and install recirculation aquaculture systems, which is a land-based production method. Yeah, that's basically what we do as a company. Next slide, Eugenio. Thank you. So that's just an example of one of the recirculation aquaculture systems that we designed and helped install. That was in Norway. So that's the type of facilities that we produce. If you can put the next slide on. Yeah, and so the training received, I'll just introduce this slide, then I'll hand you over to Eugenio. Basically what we did was we read a lot of, well, the secondees read plenty of literature, which I'm sure bored them completely. But then we had a lot of discussions based upon the work that we was doing, the actual problems that we had to solve. We had active discussions, so we discussed all different types of methodology, different approaches, the applicability of LCA to aquaculture and food production chains, what it can tell us, what it can't, circularity within the food industry, because of course traditionally, especially when in the past where food production systems were more localized, circularity featured very heavily in food production systems, but now with modern globalized production, things have changed a bit. So we discussed circularity within the context of modern global chains, value chains. Yeah, and we had a lot of discussions where I encouraged the secondees to solve problems for themselves. So I wasn't just telling them what to do. I actually got them to think about problems, solve them, see what solutions they came up with. Another thing I did, of course, one of the problems with LCA is the massive uncertainty ranges. And how do we quantify uncertainty when uncertainty is qualitative? So we're not talking about standard deviations, we're talking about actual qualitative aspects of the data. And NewSAP is a method that's used, probably a lot of you know about that, but we use it, I trained them how to use a more advanced form of NewSAP. So that's something they worked on as well. Over to you, Eugenio, I think.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. By the way, aquaculture is the fastest growing food production sector in the world, according to FAO. The growth of the world population will increase demand for food, much of it supplied by aquaculture. However, intensive aquaculture is associated with environmental impact. For example, net pen and open cage may lead to nutrient pollution, and settling particles could cause eutrophication and anoxia. Another problem in aquaculture is agricultural crops production for feed ingredient, which is a source of emission to the environment. The last problem in aquaculture is the capture of fisheries for production to fish meal and fish oil. Starting from this assumption, the focus work was divided in two projects. In this project, as we evaluated the sustainability about the microalgae Nanocropsis gatitiana. Is cultivated on industrial nutrient medium as aquafeed supplement, and subsequently it has been compared the aquafeed with and without nanocropsis. In second project, has been evaluated the sustainability about MTA. This system is the cultivation of species from different trophic levels, like salmon, mussels, and kelp. Both these solutions have been compared and evaluated through the use life cycle assessment. Claudio, can you change, please? Thank you. As regard the project about Anacropsis gatitana, the flow chart was modeling Anacropsis gatitana production, modeling trout aquafeed with and without gatitana inclusion, then environmental assessment and comparison of aquafeed, and finally evaluation of possible circular partners. As regard the project B about MTA, the flowchart was modeling salmon, mussels, and kelp juveniles production, modeling salmon, mussels, and kelp grow out, then environmental assessment and comparison of salmon monoculture and three different MTA, salmon mussel, salmon kelp, and salmon mussel kelp, and finally evaluation of possible circular partners. The method applied is LCA, which has four phases: definition of goal and scope, inventory analysis, impact assessment, result interpretation. The data used were primary and secondary. Primary real data, secondary data from literature. The software was a Simapron 9 database where EcoInvent, AgriPalize, AgriFruitoprint. The method was CML baseline. As mentioned before, there are two projects. The project about Anacropsis gatitana as we evaluated the impact of Nanocropsis gatitana on industrial medium. In this case, the functional unit was 1 kilogram Nanocropsis gatitana on industrial medium, and subsequently has compared the impact between aquafeed with and without Nanocropsis. In this case, the functional unit was 1 kilogram aquafeed with and without. As regard the project about MTA, as we compared the salmon monoculture with three different MTA: salmon mussel, salmon kelp mussel. In this case, the functional unit were 100 kilogram biomass and 100 kilogram protein with enough extractive species to remove 100% of the nitrogen emission of salmon. In this chart is reported the impact about Anacropsis gatitiana on industrial medium. As can be seen that the electricity consumption in light blue is highest impact, but infrastructure in dark blue and nutrient supply in orange also have significant contribution to impact. In this chart is reported the impact of the aquafeed with supplement of Nanocropsis, and we can see that the Nanocropsis has most impact in orange. In this chart, the result of comparison between aquafeed with and without Nanocropsis show that a small percent of Nanocropsis in aquafeed has increased significantly to impact. Discussion and conclusion. Microalgae are not necessarily environmentally promising resource for fish meal and fish oil replacement due to industrial medium and energy consumption. The inclusion of a small amount, 3%, of Nanocropsica titiana in aquafeed causes a net increase in the contribution towards all impact category. Main issue for the cultivation of Nautica titiana, there are two problems. High energy consumption. Next step could be cultivation in area with warmer climate could reduce energy consumption for heating and provision of light. There are another problem in this case, the nutrient medium. Next step could be cultivation test of wastewater or sludge must be evaluated. As regards the circular scenario, in ABT is using the sludge from aquaculture as nutrient medium for microalgae production. Yeah, the next Claudio is going to explain the last part. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you
we
hear
can.
me? Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. Regarding the integrated multitrophic aquaculture, when is used as a functional unit, 100 kg of biomass for 100% of nitrogen bioremediation, the chart of comparison of salmon monoculture with 3 different kinds of IMTA shows that the salmon monoculture has greatest contribution towards all impact categories. This is due to more inputs used for the salmon production, especially agriculture for the production of feed ingredients. After the monoculture, the IMTA salmon mussel is the one that contributes the most to all environmental impact categories, except for eutrophication. Regarding the eutrophication, the IMTA salmon mussel kelp has negative contribution towards eutrophication, whilst the IMTA salmon mussel and salmon kelp have a positive contribution to eutrophication, even though this is more or less than monoculture. This is due to the fact that there is more salmon to fulfill the functional unit, and also when is bioremediated 100% of nitrogen is not bioremediated 100% of phosphorus. When the functional unit is switched from biomass to protein, the chart of the comparison of the salmon monoculture with 3 different kinds of IMTA shows distinct differences. In fact, in this case, the IMTA salmon mussel in green has the greatest contribution to some impact categories, like the 2 categories of abiotic depletion, global warming and photochemical oxidation. Also, even where monoculture remains the most impactful, the relative percentage contribution of the IMTAs compared to monoculture are higher. This is due to the lower protein content of mussel and kelp. So the amount, the reference flow to fulfill the functional unit is higher, and so the impact are higher. In conclusion, could be said that if the functional unit is biomass, INTA compares favorably against salmon monoculture, and if the functional unit is a protein, the INTA compares less favorably against salmon monoculture, and this is due to lower protein content of kelp and mussel. INTA may possibly lead to improvement areas of environmental concerns, but a worsening of others. The results depends from the species chosen, the ratios at which they are combined, as well as the functional unit chosen. It cannot be assumed generically that IMTA is more sustainable than monoculture. Another important thing is the importance of a functional unit. In fact, variation in the choice of functional unit can change the results, like in this study. The use of a mass as a functional unit for food product is not good. In fact, mass doesn't account for any functions of food product, like protein content, energy content, taste, and other functions. Mass has to be used only as a reference flow to fulfill the functional unit. A problem of LCA in a study for food product is to compare different products by using a single functional unit. For food security, one of the most important functions is protein content. However, using protein content as functional unit doesn't avoid the problem of multifunctionality. Maybe the only one functional unit that could represent all the functions of a food is economic value. Another possible solution could be use more than one functional unit and investigate how this change can affect the results, like did in this study. INTA is based on the principle of sharing nutrients between different crops. For this reason, it could be a method to implement circular economy in the field of aquaculture, as a request from new policy. Nitrogen fertilizers cost money and they are associated with environmental impacts. Phosphorus is obtained from the mining of limited reserves. Fertilizers are applied to and uptaken by agricultural crops. These crops are used as ingredients in aquafeed, and then the feed is fed by fish in cages and net pen. Nutrients from fish metabolism then enter in surrounding environment, and these nutrients are recovered by extracting species. The mussel could be used for human nutrition. If these are not good for human nutrition, it could be used as a source of protein and fatty acid for aquafeed. This could help close the nutrient loop in aquaculture value chain. Also, the mussel shell could be used as a calcium supplement. Regarding the kelp, kelp could be used as a feed for a balloon, like did with good results in Chile and South Africa, or as agricultural fertilizers. This is important because it could afford the recovery and the reintroduction of the nutrients in the aquaculture value chain. However, the use of kelp as a fertilizer requires treatment for remove the salt, and the processes for do this are associated with high costs. Regarding the management activities to implement these two projects, for the project of Nanochloropsis gaditana, for sure it is important to invest in research and development to investigate suitability of aquaculture sludge as a nutrient medium. Investigate the opportunity for more energy efficient cultivation processes, like, for example, cultivation in a warmer climate condition for supply of light or near power plant for supply of CO2. It's important to know the potential legislation barriers to using wastes from a farmed animal to produce a feed ingredient for other animals, and if sludge requires transportation, it's important to dewater the sludge feed for reduced volume. Regarding the project of IMTA, it's important to obtain a license for cultivation area. It is based on country and always on environmental impact assessment. It requires semi-skilled and skilled labor for the management of the three different crops of salmon, mussel, and kelp. Furthermore, it is important to identify energy efficient post-harvest processes, for example, the desalting and washing the seaweed biomass to use it as a fertilizer, and finally, the research and development to develop new processes to valorize kelp as a fertilizer and mussel shells as a calcium supplement. We will thank to Sergio, Renato, and Andrea for this opportunity, and thank you also to ABT for this experience, especially for our supervisor, Steve.
Thank you very much to Steve, Eugenio, and Claudio for this great presentation. Some very nice practical examples of circularity in action, and we can see that this has been a very valuable experience for you, Eugenio and Claudio, and that really the quality of the supervision you have been benefiting from at ABT has been excellent. Not sure whether there is any specific question or remark about the work that has been done. I don't know whether Sergio wants to add something to what was presented, given that he was the initiator of this secondment and the person who also provided some assistance from an academic point of view.
No, actually, I should simply congratulate with Stephen and the two secondists for the very good work they've done. Although the work highlights that we are still far from a real circularity, efficient circularity that uses residues of the process into the process itself. So there is a lot of work to be done. I trust that this is just the beginning of the collaboration with Aqua Biotech in order for future EU projects, because there is a lot of work, and now that we have found the right expertise and the secondees have done a lot of work and acquired experience, it would be a pity to lose everything. So I think that Andrea will take care of another project for this collaboration to be done.
Thank you, Sergio. I'm not sure whether we have other remarks. Otherwise, we can just thank Steve and the whole ABT team, Eugenio and Claudio, once again about their great work, and I'm sure that this will also be published soon, so there will be some great outcomes deriving from this. We can then move on. I think we have got Adrian and Slobodan presenting some early results from their initial collaboration. So we have had recently the association of winemaking companies from the Fruska Gora region in Serbia, which has joined the consortium, and we have had a few secondments happening along this direction. We have had people from SEERC visiting Fruska Gora and vice versa. So a great example of knowledge transfer also here. And over to you, Adrian. I mean, just to highlight the interdisciplinary nature of our consortium. We have been talking about LCA in the previous presentation. Now, probably Adrian will focus a bit more on the entrepreneurial development side of things. Over to you.
So thank you very much, Andrea, and taking forward from Sergio's request of having more projects and having more collaboration. Well, this is exactly what this kind of work we've been trying to put together with our colleagues from SREM from Serbia. So just to begin, 1 second. Okay, everything is good. So, but just a brief overview. Okay, as was mentioned in the beginning, here we talk about secondments in between two institutions. We have SEERC, the Southeast European Research Center, which is actually based in Thessaloniki in Greece. We are an international research center of the University of York from the United Kingdom. And we primarily conduct quite a lot of work and quite a lot of European funded projects with a great majority on circular economy, sustainable development, and responsible innovation. And on the other side, we have SREM, which is the winery association of this region, highlighted with the red color from Serbia, which is actually situated in the greater Vojvodina region from the country. SREM is actually an association of wine producers, like winemaking, and also viticulture producers. So here we talk about companies, small producers primarily, that have quite a lot of land, okay, in which they have viticulture operations, as well as where they actually have quite modern wine production facilities with a lot of experience, with a great tradition. and with very, very good potential for mass production and export. So it's not only for local production. And the idea of focusing on this specific sector and primarily on winemaking and viticulture is that it's becoming quite a trend, let's say, as part of the overall food production and with all the concerns that sustainable development are posing on the international environment. And there's not so much talk about this, and there's quite a few and quite a limited focus on this specific area. But at the moment, and with these initial secondments that we started doing, both me that I spent some time at SREM and also Slobodan that came basically in Greece and visited SEERC and our entire viticulture ecosystem that SEERC provides, it's something a bit that goes a bit beyond just looking at the scientific part. And the idea in a nutshell, what we wanted when we first met, and it was very good meeting with with a celebration, I would say, considering also the context and the topic. The idea is that the association SREM in Serbia is lucky enough to be part in a very good research and innovation ecosystem. And when I say that, I'm talking about the region of Vojvodina in Serbia, which is actually the most innovative region that has very good infrastructure for knowledge and technology transfer. So what is happening there is that the main knowledge provider, which is the University of Novi Sad, and with particular link to our project and to all this work that we're doing, its Faculty of Agriculture, they have established together with SREM and with the autonomous region of Vojvodina, which is basically their regional government, they have established an entity called in simple terms, let's call it the Wine Institute, which actually resembles a living lab kind of infrastructure that has a lot of research and innovation capacity placed, of course, and offered by the university. It has very good and innovative equipment that is used to provide the certificate of origin for locally produced wines. They issue reports, they control the overall wine production in the region. So everything is very, very well coordinated in order to produce high quality wine and to ensure that whatever is being done there bears the proper wine quality label. Now, this institute has a very strategic plan. And they don't want to stay only at looking at wine quality, of course. So their goal is basically to become like a regional powerhouse for training and supporting the transition to the market of environmental sustainability solutions like technology in viticulture and in winemaking. And having this circular economy, of course, is one of the main themes that they used to focus on, and one of the themes where they want to build capacity and expertise. As part of ProCEedS, SEERC, we are in charge as an institution. We were in charge actually of the deliverable that was dealing with the multi-stakeholder engagement. And this is actually crucial because, as you have seen here, and as you have seen from what I've been saying now, multi-stakeholder engagement is literally the key that facilitates this kind of technology transfer to the market. And in this case, where you have kind of this triple helix, quadruple helix ecosystem that supports each other, and you have also policy support, okay, that would finance, because this is the most important thing, that would finance, okay, the support for transitioning any kind of clean tech circular economy solutions to the market, and in this specific case to the wine production producers from the entire region, then everything becomes a bit clearer. And all the challenges, for example, that we have seen from the other countries, that, okay, maybe policy support is missing, policy support is here, policy support is not there, maybe money is not so facilitated to enable this kind of transitions, all these things are being reduced and mitigated to a maximum. Of course, this is a special case. This is a rarity from what we have seen in this part of Europe, in Eastern Europe, let's call it like that, where the overall research and innovation potential and capacity is reduced compared to the European average. But this existing wine institute wants to have this great vision, this great plan, and transform itself via ProCEedS and via many other projects and initiatives that they're trying to undertake in order to achieve their mission of embedding circular economy in the overall regional winemaking and viticulture operations. And here was our role. Here is where we initially started our collaboration, and we discussed what we can do as part of SEERC and together with other partners as well from the consortium, because we extended this collaboration with other partners as well in order to bring more expertise. They also stated their needs, like what they want to learn, what they want to see from us and from our entire ecosystem. And basically, we put together an action plan in terms of how all this work together that we're doing and that we will do over a longer period of time can help them develop this wine institute and take it to the next level. Something concrete, something useful, something with a very good market potential. So the answer to this is, first of all, SEERC to provide research and innovation know-how on circular economy, responsible research and innovation, and multi-stakeholder engagement to further strengthen the role of these existing infrastructures. And SREM, on the other hand, to acquire and to provide winemaking and grape production market insights to SEERC and to SEERC's viticulture ecosystem, because in order for us, when I say us, I mean SEERC and the other academic partners, to know what kind of training and consulting to provide, we will need to have a better insight into this somewhat new sector for us, because it's one of the first times, I would say, that we are operating in this kind of specific sector, which is quite unique, I would have to say. And doing this, basically, I would just like to summarize some of the main activities that we have done in order to understand what was happening in this initial secondment, as Andrea mentioned. From our side, from these secondments that we had at SREM, basically, we did quite a broad range, I would say, of activities, starting from stakeholder mapping using the ProCEedS methodology. And we helped them basically identify any missing actors, any missing stakeholders that were not fully represented, identification of drivers and barriers to circular economy. And for example, here it was quite interesting because, you know, worldwide you look and you say, like, okay, what is happening? What is the circular economy application in winemaking? And there's quite a lot of activities, starting from reusing waste to create pellets for heating, oils, vinegars, other kind of sweet wine that is made from leftovers over winter. But there was no need here. this was the funny first finding, and at first sight, after undertaking interviews and surveys with the wineries, with more than 100 wineries, they were not aware of this, and even those that were aware of this said that they are not working. So all these kind of activities, all these kind of byproducts from circular economy applications in winemaking, they were not something that they would be interested in. And then what we did is that we tried to understand whether they did something wrong, because maybe they did something wrong in the application or in the deployment of this kind of solutions. And we did identify some of the wrong things that were basically mostly due to the fact that they were inefficient in their processing. So the costs for producing this kind of byproducts were actually too high, and that's why they were basically not so interested. But by showing them concrete examples, concrete solutions from other ecosystems where these things work properly, they became a bit more aware and a bit more open to try, even though their main interest was mostly to look into areas such as resource efficiency, such as controlling drought, for example, and reducing the use of water for irrigation, which is becoming more and more problematic lately. Still, with all this work, we identified that producers are basically unaware of this kind of circular economy applications and circular economy solutions in winemaking. And this is something that was introduced as part of SREM's strategy to provide better information packages and better marketing services to their members, basically, in order to inform them of what is happening and in order to help them basically comply to regulations. And this is becoming more and more important because both at the regional level, so Vojvodina as a region, as autonomous region, I would say, in terms of governance, as well as at the national level at Serbian government, circular economy, bioproduction, and all these kind of concerns are becoming mandatory legislations as part of their accession in the European Union. And having this is the right time basically to produce and to push for this kind of activities in order to help these producers expand their services and do it in the right way, in a circular way, in order to be compliant and to make sure, of course, that they achieve all these policy regulations. Then we worked on basically developing a multi-stakeholder model to boost the potential of SREM to implement circular economy at a regional level. So we designed mechanisms and systems basically that were attached to their wine institute in order to expand this collaboration and to engage the proper stakeholders in order to facilitate the implementation of circular economy. And we provided the research and innovation guidelines to support the design and development of the Wine Institute transformation with some sort of added value elements from modern, let's say, research and innovation, such as open science and citizen science, basically, in order to assist them in the broader and proper transformation of their research and innovation capacity. This is what we have done. We had a lot of meetings, a lot of interaction, a lot of high-level, actually, stakeholder networking events with people from the local ecosystem, with winemakers, with people from the university, from the region, so policymakers also. And throughout this entire experience, basically, we did manage to see that there is a very good commitment. And surprisingly, I want to repeat this as much as possible, there is a very good policy commitment, which is impressive. And this actually gives us a lot of confidence that we can push this idea forward and that we can move with all these activities in order to help all the local producers and maybe even those from outside of the region in order to develop this kind of circular economy capacity. On the other side, SREM secondment at SEERC had a broader, I would say, a broader focus in the sense that we had to focus more on the training part, on the training element. So here, the secondments of Slobodan, the early secondments, because they're quite short-term at the moment, and they will be continued over the next months. These secondments basically started with meeting and networking with SEERC staff and key contacts, attending seminars and classes on circular economy and winemaking via our partner universities also, working basically with our researchers that are focusing on projects related to circular economy, as well as with those that work on projects on responsible research and innovation, basically. Quite a lot of work on policymaking and understanding how these regional ecosystems work, focusing a bit more of understanding smart specialization and how this can be taken back home in the Vojvodina region in order to help design this broader wine institute. And then the visit ended with concrete field trips to SEERC's viticulture ecosystem. Particularly, Slobodan spent quite a lot of time and did a lot of benchmarking work on overall viticulture production, wine quality, and circular economy applications at these wineries that you see here, such as Alpha, Ctimagiro Vasiliu, Vivlia Hora, and Lazaridi. And these are basically among the most representative wineries of Greece, with a very long tradition, with a very strong market reach, both nationally and internationally. And this has helped, of course, it has helped Slobodan quite a lot and SREM quite a lot in order to understand, how are these wineries operating from a technical and operational perspective, and what are their challenges, in order to see that these regions, because, okay, Serbia and Greece, they're not so far away, the climate, okay, it is different, but some of the challenges also in terms of, for example, utilizing certain pesticides, protecting from pests and other kind of insects that basically create damage, all these have common solutions and common basically methods to prevent and to protect themselves. So all these mutual learning exercises and mutual learning activities have enabled the stakeholders to transfer proper knowledge and know-how. And I'm sure at some point when the secondments are finished, Slobodan will come and provide us with a very detailed information on the more technical insights and the actual science behind winemaking and viticulture from all these experiences. But all this work, if we are to summarize it basically in terms of looking at impact, okay, so here I would like, for the moment, of course, to focus on scientific and industrial impact, and later on we can look at broader impacts such as for society and for the environment. But at the moment, from this early stage of secondment, we are looking at specific scientific impacts, such as, for example, the one stemming from the application of ProCEedS multi-stakeholder engagement methodology on a sample of around 100 viticulture producers. Here we will have access to data for publications and access to real data, basically, on circular economy implementation in this Fruska Gora region from Vojvodina. The engagement, basically, with regional stakeholders from SREM's region, like the ones that I mentioned before, the industries, the policymakers, academia, and society, will basically enable us to better focus the deployment of RRI, responsible research and innovation, development of new research and innovation partnerships and proposals focused on circular economy. And ultimately, by working, again, from a scientific perspective, by doing the field visits and secondments at SREM, we actually got to synergize with other European funded projects where SREM is involved, such as the Demeter project, which basically installed a lot of smart sensors and IoT systems alongside the wine production and wine fields that basically provide real-time data related to various environmental indicators and as well as to indicators related to insects and pests that can basically create damage to the vineyards. And all this work was actually quite interesting so far, and it shows that is a very good and very big promising environment, an environment that fosters the potential, let's say, deployment of circular economy solutions. When it comes to the industrial impact and know-how integration, so this is more the benefits that SREM basically has gained so far from performing the secondments and working as part of the ProCEEDS project. Okay, they have acquired direct research and innovation consulting for better embedding circular economy in winemaking and production. They have gained concrete access to circular economy models, methodologies, and best practices internationally. They have engaged in peer learning from southern and more experienced winemaking associations where research and innovation, such as circular economy, is better embedded in the overall deployment of solutions. And of course, they have gained the progress towards learning how to acquire research and innovation grants and attract funding to further support their efforts of embedding circular economy in their region. In terms of next steps, we are going to look at piloting concrete circular economy models, simulations, and LCA, as you have seen before, basically, to identify value-added sustainability services to mitigate drought and water use as part of complementary solutions to circular economy strategies that we will try to implement. Joint work for assessing the potential of developing byproducts and services in a circular way. Organization of dissemination events to engage regional actors and to do some sort of celebrations in order to motivate stakeholders and to keep them involved, and of course acquire funding for the future wine institute. That's it for now. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any question, and we are more than happy to keep you posted and to keep you basically connected to all this great work and to show more results as time is passing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian, for this great presentation. I don't know whether there is any remark, and as we said, I mean, this is very preliminary type of work, which you have started to do with the people from Fruska Gora, from SREM. So we look forward to receiving more input from you and more insights to be shared with the rest of the consortium. Don't know if there is any question from the partners. Okay, if there are no questions, we can go to the last presentation, which is from myself, and it will be just a quick one because it's just about, you know, a secondment which has just started at one of our industrial partners, Proteg, and what I want to share with you is essentially the early work that we have started to do about the used cooking oil supply chain, which is the supply chain where our industrial partner Proteg is engaged. So here I'm sharing with you just some preliminary reflections. Basically, this secondment started last month in February. I spent 1 week
at ProTeg, and basically I'm just going to share with you some preliminary considerations which I developed spending a few days with the company observing their operations. So this is myself with the team from ProTeg, Mr. Alberto Tavano, and Mr. Papa, who is also the owner of the company. This will be the people working on this industrial case study. Akis will be assisting me with the data analysis. So basically, what is ProTeg? Well, this is essentially a company which is involved in the manufacturing, in the collection of byproducts from the food supply chain. So basically, they collect slaughterhouse waste and byproducts from the slaughterhouse process, and also they collect used cooking oil from both domestic and commercial customers. Our secondment will be focusing on the used cooking oil part. So basically, what they do with the used cooking oil within their plant is transforming it into biodiesel. I will not talk about the details of the process. I mean, Sergio and members of his team has been working a lot on these, but just a few notes. Of course, I mean, we can use used cooking oil to produce biodiesel. It's a better lubricant than diesel, so it can extend the engine's life. We can significantly reduce CO2 emissions related to the production of the fuel. And basically, by recycling used cooking oil, we can avoid producing biofuels from agri-food products, which is a big problem. Also, by enacting this reverse supply chain, we can prevent used cooking oil being treated in landfills. And also, the biggest problem is that if you dispose of used cooking oil by just throwing it down the basin or down the toilet, well, it's quite easy to damage the environment, because with 1 liter of used cooking oil, you can contaminate 1 million liters of water. So that's why we need to dispose of used cooking oil in a careful way. And of course, I mean, if we analyze the context, this is of course related to the Italian context, but things are not very different in other European countries. Well, I mean, we can say there is some regulatory push towards better regulation of the disposal of used cooking oil, at least in the commercial sector. We can say that you know, it is now mandatory for commercial organizations such as restaurants and other catering establishments to have a supplier which essentially can treat the used cooking oil, but this is not yet mandatory, for instance, for the domestic sector. So for domestic users of used cooking oil, there is no need to have a collector of these materials. There is actually no door-to-door system that collects used cooking oils. There is still limited awareness of the harmfulness of UCOs, and just 25% of the UCOs are treated in Italy. So there is a huge amount of used cooking oil which ends up in our seas, in the Mediterranean Sea, and such figures are aligned to European averages. Circular economy actions in the field are perceived still as an EU obligation. There is a lack of initiatives happening to foster industrial symbiosis, and so fostering exchange of these byproducts by, for instance, investing in some public funded biorefineries. And there is also a lack of investment by municipalities on the domestic and residential sector. On the market side, things get quite interesting because the margins for collectors and processors of used cooking oil are very tight. And this is something quite interesting I discovered in the last weeks. Basically, in the past, customers were paying a fee to get a collector to dispose of used cooking oils. Now, due to competition, due to the fact that there are more companies in the market, due to the fact that there are several organizations which can process these materials, and given that they need materials to keep their plants at a decent level of capacity utilization, the collection happens for free. And it's not unusual that companies like Proteg sometimes pay the bigger customers to get a more regular flow of materials. So it's a very, very peculiar dynamic which has been introduced by the fact that it's a free market. There is little regulation in the sector. And also other issues I discovered by dealing with the company in my visits is that, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic posed huge challenges to them. You can consider that 70% of their volumes come from the commercial sector, from restaurants, bars, cafes, and other establishments. And of course, Italy experienced several waves of hard lockdowns where restaurants and other catering establishments were closed. In March, May 2020, restaurants couldn't even operate as takeaways or for deliveries. And so this meant that there was a huge decrease in the volumes of used cooking oil the Proteg plant was collecting and processing. This also led to a stop of the plant due to insufficient supply of materials. And this tells you a lot about how reverse supply chains work in practice. This has led Proteg to understand that they need to diversify the pool of customers. So they need to pull more materials from domestic customers, and they are working on this by trying to run pop-up events in towns, and also striking deals with local administrations, but this is proving to be challenging. Also, other issues they are facing, they have their own fleet of 10 vehicles with which they collect used cooking oil. They use some very rudimental district techniques to assign drivers to a given area. However, the collection mainly happens when customers call the operator. However, sometimes, given that the quantities the collectors are going to source from a single customer are really low, if you compare them to the capacity of a vehicle, it might make sense to visit nearby locations in order to collect other quantities and maximize the utility deriving from a trip. However, it's very challenging to understand when it's the right time to visit a nearby customer. They also have a driver rating system in place to keep track of the efficiency of the collection process. And another issue they have is the extreme fragmentation of the pool of customers. And the preliminary analysis we ran together for the 18-19 data reveals that they have more than 3,000 unique addresses where the company has collected used cooking oils during this period. This includes both residential and commercial customers. And what struck me was the complete lack of supply chain integration. It's difficult to know how much used cooking oil you will find when going for collection. There are huge risks of empty runs. There is no information sharing between ProTeg and customers, and the technology is quite rudimental. The bins that are employed by ProTeg for the collection are really traditional bins. They are really not intelligent bins, which could be used, for instance, and could trigger a collection where a certain level of used cooking oil is collected in the bin. They are evaluating this option at the moment because they recognize that this risk of empty runs they are facing of drivers driving around and not collecting enough used cooking oil is posing a huge risk to their efficiency. Another huge risk they face is related to seasonality. We're talking about a very touristic region, the Campania region of Italy, with a lot of seaside areas, and the pool of customers they have changes dramatically from the winter to the summer. For instance, during summer, you have a lot of used cooking oil being disposed of by restaurants which operate nearby the seaside. However, during the winter, you don't have these customers providing a lot of used cooking oil. While this pattern seems quite unstable, it repeats itself over the years. So this is the typical example of seasonality in time series. They collect time series, but they are not performing specific analysis. And so what we will do in the next months, starting from these data we have collected and this observation we have performed, well, we have understood that used cooking oil companies, both collectors and processors like ProTeg, operate on very tight margins. Logistical efficiency can play a huge role. However, the challenging bit is that there is no supply chain integration that can really work in favor of high efficiency. There is a very high risk of empty runs. It's hard to understand when it's the time to visit customers to collect good quantities and to make sure that you're avoiding competitors visiting first your customers. So essentially, you need to decide a time that is not too early, because in that case, you will collect very small quantities, but not too late, because otherwise you're maximizing the risk of competitors visiting first. And so in the next months, in the next visits that I will run, and also Akis and other members of the team will probably support me, we will try to help ProTeg to improve their forecasting methods. What the objective might be is to have a sort of red flagging system that suggests when it might be best to visit the customer based on previous data, and also a system that can help them analyzing promising locations in order to run pop-up events for residential customers. So, as I said, I mean, very early developments. I just spent a week at ProTeg in February. but we hope that in the next months we will be able to develop some interesting things together. And there is quite a lot of commitment from the company to work on this together, which is good. So I don't know whether there is any remark about this final presentation, any question you might want to ask.
May I?
Yes, sure.
The topic is very important, very interesting. In previous preliminary studies we performed, it appeared that the potential of the recovery would cover 1% of the energy need by vehicles in the Campania region, which is not a small amount. And therefore, of course, I fully agree to continue this. More than a question, I have a comment on one term that you have used and that we sometimes use, the competitors, in one of the last slides. Actually, I don't like competitors and competition, although this seems to be the basis of the economy. Likely, the best would be not to help Proteg arrive first to the consumer, to the customer, but help all the interested companies in the region or in the central, southern Italy, etc., to network and collaborate to improve the ability to collect the cooking oil, to convert it. At present, the conversion of cooking oil into biodiesel is the most impacting step, for example, and which suggests perhaps to do something else, not what is done up to now. And you know, the idea is that when the cake is too small, instead of fighting around the last slice, it would be better to expand the cake. I know that Andrea agrees for sure, but what can we do? This is also a logistic problem.
Yeah, no, thank you, Sergio. This is a very interesting point, very interesting remark. The problem is that, you know, at the moment, we're not just talking about competitors, we're also talking about fifths, which essentially go there and steal the used cooking oil and then sell it to legitimate processors. I mean, this is a phenomenon which is on the rise. Of course, I didn't include it in the slides. I didn't want to talk about this, but when I was talking to Mr. Papa from Proteg, he explained me that he needs to spend several hours per week going to the police and reporting about these robberies. So when we talk about this forecasting approach to let them know when to visit a customer is also to prevent this type of events. I completely agree with you with the cooperation. Well, in an ideal world, we should have a sort of public system which disposes of used cooking oil as we have for all the other waste which is produced at domestic buildings. However, this is not the case in Italy. And so you have firms which are competing on a market for used cooking oil. That also explains why in the past you were getting paid to collect used cooking oil, and now it's almost like you need to pay the customer to dispose of it by using your company. For sure, I mean, you know, these could be looked at from a policy point of view, and this model could be hugely criticized because at the moment we just have a very low amount of used cooking oil which is legitimately disposed of, and this could be probably another activity on which we can focus at the moment. However, some free marketeer, somebody who is really a free market enthusiast, could be that the system works in a great manner for the customer, because while in the past they needed to pay to dispose of used cooking oil, and now they can do it for free. And if they put the bin outside of their restaurant or outside of their building, in a few hours it will be gone, because it's either legitimate companies or the informal economy which is taking care of it. So it's a very, very interesting debate, and I'm sure it is full of a lot of implications which we can discuss further. Any other remark from somebody else? I'm just conscious of time, so we have overrun just by 15 minutes, but still we have overrun, so probably we have time just for a very final question.
Andrea, just one consideration, one comment in your reply. So what seems to happen in the industry, in the sector that you're analyzing, is pretty the same in the e-waste, where the small treatment companies look for e-waste to feed their plants. And so, even though in this sector there is an European regulation that should avoid this kind of cannibalization among the small plants that treats e-waste. Just this consideration.
Thank you, Renato. This is a trend which we are certainly observing. I mean, there is also a concentration trend. Of course, this could be seen as a sort of Marxian law in a way. The rate of profit is going down and we have more centralization. So people at ProTech were telling me that what's happening is that smaller companies, smaller treatment companies, smaller processors, smaller operators which collect used cooking oil are being absorbed by the bigger ones. So there is a trend towards increasing centralization and concentration in the sector. And this is something else we can discuss.
Sorry.
Okay.
May I add,
hello? There is somebody talking.
Yes, it's me, Maddalena.
Hi, Maddalena.
Hi. No, I just want to maybe a suggestion that exploring the policy and also the funding system of the of cooking oil could be also interesting because as you may know, according to Renewable Energy Directive, the second one, the 2018, the waste cooking oil is considered renewable and counted twice in the system of accounting. So that's why also there is this strong competition among companies and so on. And also there was last year, I guess, or a couple of years ago, Netherlands that was even importing cooking oil, passing cooking oil as palm oil. So this is also interesting in the institution aspect, no, of boosting some renewable energies and later having some shortcomings and trade-offs.
No, definitely, this is something we can look at. Thank you very much for your remarks. They've been very useful, and they will be taken into account when planning the next part of my secondment. So, thank you very much for being with us with the ProCEedS project for the all afternoon. I think it has been a very informative session. It has been giving us the opportunity to explore from a closer point of view what we have been doing in recent months within the project. We will, of course, upload the recording of this session on our YouTube channel in such a way that it is disseminated to the public in spirit of the open science approach that guides the ProCEedS project. And I'm sure that we will have similar events in the next months where we'll be able to share even more progress, even more exciting findings deriving from our secondments. Once again, thank you for being with us, and watch out for the project websites where we will upload the presentation slides, the link to the YouTube channel. Thank you very much, and have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.